As I pushed open the creaking doors of St. Margaret's Hospital, a musty, medicinal scent filled my nostrils. The hospital, renowned for its long-standing service, had always carried an air of mystery and antiquity. I was the newest addition to its staff, a young nurse eager to make a difference. The coma ward, my assigned domain, was a quiet expanse of sterile white walls and softly beeping machines. Rows of beds, each cradling a motionless form, stretched across the room. There was a palpable heaviness in the air, a silent acknowledgment of lives hanging in a fragile balance. I remember feeling an overwhelming sense of responsibility and reverence as I began my rounds. Initially, my days were routine, filled with the typical tasks of monitoring vital signs and administering medications. But it wasn't long before I started noticing something unusual. The patients, despite their comatose states, were whispering in their sleep. At first, I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, a trick of the echo in quiet corridors. But the whispers grew louder, clear, forming words and sentences that seemed impossible for their unresponsive minds to produce. Their words were often disjointed, nonsensical at times, but always uttered with an urgency that sent shivers down my spine. Phrases like "don't go through the door" or "she's watching" became a haunting chorus in the dimly lit ward. Each shift left me more intrigued and unsettled. What were these patients seeing in the depths of their comas? What secrets were they privy to in this liminal space between life and death? I started staying late, long after my shift ended, sitting beside their beds, listening. I felt a deep, inexplicable connection to these sleeping souls, as if they were trying to communicate something vital, something that I was meant to understand. Then, one fateful night, the whispers took a personal turn. Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had been in a coma for several weeks, suddenly muttered my name. "Sarah," she said, her voice a raspy whisper, "beware the ones who walk the halls at night." My heart raced, and a cold dread settled in the pit of my stomach. Her words felt like a dire warning, one that I couldn't ignore. That night, I lay awake in my small apartment, Mrs. Thompson's words echoing in my mind. A sense of foreboding gripped me, a feeling that I was standing on the edge of a dark abyss, about to plunge into the unknown. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a terrifying journey, one that would challenge everything I believed about the world around me. The next day, I returned to the hospital with a sense of unease. The bright fluorescent lights and the sterile smell of the corridors did little to dispel the chill that had settled in my bones. As I approached the coma ward, my steps slowed, apprehension tightening its grip on me. Mrs. Thompson's words lingered in my mind, a haunting prelude to the day. Entering the ward, I was greeted by the familiar sight of patients lying motionless, entangled in a web of tubes and wires. Their whispers filled the room, a low, eerie hum that seemed more pronounced than ever. I tried to focus on my duties, but my attention kept drifting to the whispers, searching for meaning in their cryptic messages. It was during a quiet moment, as I was adjusting the IV drip of a young man, that I heard it again. "Sarah," the voice was faint, almost lost in the beeps of the machines. "They're watching." My hands froze, and a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. The voice was different this time, not Mrs. Thompson's. This realization sent a wave of terror crashing over me. It wasn't just one patient, multiple patients were speaking to me, or about me. I spent the rest of my shift in a daze, my mind racing with questions. Who were they? What did these warnings mean? Were these just the fragmented dreams of comatose minds, or something more sinister? The logical part of me struggled to rationalize the events, but deep down, I knew there was something unexplainable at play. As soon as my shift ended, I made my way to the hospital's records room. The old dusty archives were seldom visited, the digital age rendering these paper records almost obsolete. Flicking on the dim light, I began my search, poring over decades-old files and forgotten patient records. I was looking for any clue, any past incident that might shed light on what was happening. Hours passed, the only sound in the room the rustle of paper and the occasional creak of the old building settling. Then, I found it. A tattered, leather-bound journal, buried under a stack of files. The journal belonged to a nurse who worked at the hospital in the 1950s. As I flipped through the yellow pages, a sense of dread grew within me. The nurse had documented a similar phenomenon: patients in comas speaking in their sleep, uttering warnings and fearful messages. Just like now, the whispers were dismissed by others as mere coincidences, the ramblings of unconscious minds. But this nurse believed there was more to it. Her entry spoke of a growing fear, of feeling watched, and of shadows moving in the periphery of her vision. Her final entry was the most chilling. She wrote of her intention to confront whatever was causing this, to venture into the hospital's abandoned wing, where she believed the answer lay. The journal ended abruptly there, no concluding entry, no explanation of what she discovered. I closed the journal, my hands trembling. The parallels were too striking to be mere coincidence. The whispers, the feelings of being watched, the abandoned wing, it was all happening again. And just like the nurse before me, I felt a compulsion to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. The days that followed were a blur of whispers and shadows. I continued my work in the coma ward, but my mind was constantly elsewhere, consumed by the mystery unfolding around me. The whispers grew more frequent, more urgent. Words like hidden, truth, and behind the mirror were repeated, weaving a tapestry of fear and intrigue. I began to document everything. In a small notebook, I jotted down each whisper, each phrase, trying to piece together the puzzle. My nights were dedicated to researching the hospital's history, delving into old news articles and records. The more I discovered, the more I realized that St. Margaret's had a past mired in tragedy and unexplained events. During one of my research sessions, I stumbled upon an old newspaper clipping that sent a chill down my spine. It detailed a series of unexplained disappearances in the hospital, dating back to the same era as the nurse's journal. The victims were all hospital staff, and their disappearances were never solved. The article mentioned the hospital's abandoned wing, a place rumored to be haunted, a place where some believed the answers to these mysteries lay. My curiosity turned into an obsession. I couldn't shake the feeling that the whispers, the disappearances, and the abandoned wing were all connected. And then, the eerie events began. It started with flickering lights in the hallway, bulbs bursting as I walked under them. Objects in the ward moved on their own, IV stands rolling slightly, curtains rustling without any breeze. I would catch glimpses of figures in the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there would be nothing there. The most unsettling event happened late one night. I was alone in the ward, the only sound the steady beep of the heart monitors. Suddenly, every monitor began to beep erratically, the lines on the screens dancing wildly. Then, as quickly as it started, it stopped, and the monitors returned to their normal rhythms. I stood there, heart pounding, a sense of unseen eyes watching me from the shadows. Each whisper, each strange occurrence, was a piece of the puzzle, leading me to the inevitable conclusion that I needed to explore the abandoned wing. It was a reckless thought, driven by an inexplicable urge to understand, to uncover whatever was lurking in the depths of this hospital. I knew the risks, the potential danger, but the whispers wouldn't let me rest. They called to me, a siren song of secrets and hidden truths. And so, I made the decision to venture into the unknown, to confront whatever awaited me in the abandoned wing of St. Margaret's Hospital. That night, equipped with a flashlight and the nurse's journal tucked into my pocket, I made my way to the sealed-off section of the hospital. The air grew colder as I approached, and a sense of foreboding settled over me. But there was no turning back now. I was about to step into the heart of the mystery, into a realm of shadows and whispers. The door to the abandoned wing groaned as I pushed it open, its hinges protesting after years of disuse. The beam of my flashlight cut through the oppressive darkness, revealing a corridor frozen in time. Dust lay thick on the floor, and cobwebs adorned the corners like macabre decorations. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. My heart raced as I stepped inside, the nurse's journal pressed against my chest. Each step felt like a descent into a world unmoored from time, a place where the past lingered like a malevolent shadow. The whispers in my head grew louder, a chorus of voices urging me forward, their words a jumbled tapestry of warnings and pleas. As I ventured deeper into the wing, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The flashlight's beam revealed rooms left in disarray, medical equipment and personal belongings abandoned in haste. It was as if the people here had vanished into thin air, leaving behind a ghostly echo of their existence. Then, I heard it, a whisper, different from the rest, chillingly clear and close. "Sarah," it hissed, a voice laced with malice and pain. My blood turned cold, and I swung the flashlight around, its beam landing on a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a spectral apparition, a wraith-like form that shimmered in the dim light. Its features were indistinct, but its eyes, oh those eyes, burned with an intense, malevolent light. I knew in that moment that this was the entity responsible for the whispers, the keeper of the hospital's dark secrets. "You've come," it spoke, its voice a guttural whisper that resonated in the very air. Like the others before you, drawn to the truth, yet blind to the consequence. Frozen in place, I managed to stammer, "What are you? What do you want?" The spirit's laugh was a sound of despair and madness. "I am the forgotten, the betrayed," it said. "Bound to these halls by grief and rage. And you are the next vessel for my torment." I realized then that the whispers were not just random utterances of comatose patients. They were echoes of this entity's anguish, but I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. Clutching the journal, I remembered the ritual described within its pages, a way to banish the spirit. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. With trembling hands, I opened the journal and began reciting the incantation written in its aged pages. The words felt strange on my tongue, a language forgotten by time. The spirit howled in rage, its form twisting and contorting as the words of the ritual bounded. The hospital shook as if in the grip of an earthquake, the very foundation groaning under the strain of the supernatural forces at play. The air crackled with energy, the darkness pulsating around the enraged spirit. As I spoke the final words of the ritual, a blinding light erupted from the journal, enveloping the spirit. It let out a final ear-shattering scream before disintegrating into a cloud of ethereal mist, which then vanished into the air. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed to the floor, the journal slipping from my grasp. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie silence. The entity was gone, banished by the ritual, but the cost of my confrontation was yet to be fully realized. In the aftermath of the ritual, the abandoned wing of St. Margaret's Hospital felt different. The oppressive air of malevolence had dissipated, leaving behind a quiet stillness. I picked myself up from the floor, my body aching, my mind reeling from the encounter. The journal, its pages now blank, lay beside me, its purpose fulfilled. As I made my way back through the darkened corridors, the reality of what had transpired began to sink in. I had faced a vengeful spirit, a remnant of the hospital's troubled past, and had somehow emerged victorious. But the victory felt hollow, the cost yet unknown. When I returned to the coma ward, the change was immediate. The whispers had ceased, the patients lay in undisturbed silence. It was as if a spell had been broken, the eerie chorus of voices silenced forever. I felt a mixture of relief and unease, wondering if I had truly ended the haunting or merely appeased it for a time. The following days were a blur. I continued my work, but my interactions with the patients were tinged with a newfound awareness of the thin veil between life and death. The hospital staff noticed the change as well, the unexplained occurrences ceasing as suddenly as they had begun. There were no more flickering lights, no more shifting shadows in the corners of their eyes. I couldn't bring myself to share the truth of what I had experienced. Who would believe such a fantastical tale? Instead, I kept it to myself, a heavy burden that weighed on my soul. My decision to leave St. Margaret's came not long after. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being a part of something far beyond my understanding. The hospital, with its secrets and shadows, had left an indelible mark on me, a scar that I knew would never fully heal. As I packed my belongings, preparing to leave the place that had been both my torment and my revelation, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. My life after leaving St. Margaret's Hospital unfolded with a surreal normalcy. I found work at a smaller, less ominous hospital across the city, where the corridors were bright, and the air didn't hang heavy with secrets. But the echoes of my experiences in the coma ward never truly left me. They lingered in the back of my mind, a constant whisper reminding me of the thin line between our world and the one that lurks in the shadows. The coma patients of my new workplace were silent in their slumber, their dreams, if they had any, remaining their own. I found comfort in this, in the absence of the eerie whispers that had once filled my nights. Yet, part of me remained on edge, always listening, always waiting for a sign that the peace was just an illusion. Months passed, and the memories of St. Margaret's began to fade, like a nightmare dissipating in the light of day. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I had left it all behind. That was until one evening, a moment that shattered the fragile serenity I had built. It happened during a routine checkup on a newly admitted coma patient. As I adjusted the IV, a whisper broke the silence of the room. My heart stopped, a cold dread washing over me. The whisper was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. "They're still watching," it said, a chill running down my spine. I stepped back, my breath caught in my throat. The room felt suddenly colder, the shadows deeper. It was a stark reminder that what I had experienced at St. Margaret's wasn't an isolated incident, but a glimpse into a hidden reality that stretched far beyond the walls of any hospital. As I left the room, my mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The implications were terrifying. The entity, the whispers, the unexplained phenomena, they weren't confined to St. Margaret's. They were part of a larger, more incomprehensible tapestry of the unknown. The resolution I had sought, the closure I had hoped for, seemed now like a distant dream. The truth was that the whispers had not ceased, they had merely followed me, a haunting melody that refused to be. I realized then that my journey wasn't over. It had just taken a new, more unsettling turn. The whispers, the shadows, the things that lurked just out of sight, they were still out there, waiting, watching. And I, whether by fate or chance, had become irrevocably entwined with their enigmatic existence. As I walked the halls of the hospital, the weight of this revelation hung heavy on my shoulders. I was no longer just a nurse, I was a witness to the mysteries that dwell in the spaces between worlds, a keeper of secrets that were never meant to be known. And so, my story ends not with answers, but with questions. Questions that linger in the whispers of the night, in the shadows of forgotten places, in the eyes of those who sleep with secrets locked within their minds. The only certainty is the unsettling truth that whatever lies beyond, whatever watches from the darkness, is still out there, somewhere, waiting.